Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this, which is our fourth webinar for newly accepted UNE students. This is a series of informational presentations that are designed for our newest students and families. We welcome you and hope that you are able to get a lot of your questions answered tonight. We want you to know that we are always available for one-on-one appointments to discuss issues that are specific to your financial situation. We are a very service-oriented unit, and we always welcome contact with you. Our staff works hard to personalize your experience here at UNE. We understand that this process is different for every single family, and we want to make sure that we're here to guide you and help you create a balanced approach to this investment. So we hope that you get a lot out of tonight's presentation and that you'll join us for our future webinars. So those of you who have been joining us for our webinar series at this point know me. I'm Corinne Peterson. I'm the Director of Student Financial Services here at UNE. I'm being joined this evening by Bill Rosario, who's our Assistant Director of Tuition Planning. He's going to be assisting us with trying to answer questions. I just want to let everybody know that we have a lot of participants, and our plan is to try to answer as many questions as we can as they come. But we're also going to reserve time at the end for Q&A. We try to keep these sessions, many of you know who have been with me for a while know I try to keep these sessions at about an hour because I know that your time is very valuable. So we try to make sure that we're giving you information that is going to be valuable and helpful. Just remember, and those of you who have joined me before know this, we record all of our webinars. So I always like to say, don't try to rush and write everything down. You can join us and listen tonight, and then in 2 or 3 days, we will upload the recording. So then you can go through it at your leisure doing that. So we're going to get started. In this presentation, we're going to be reviewing some of the topics that we've covered through the spring. Our main objective here is to kind of cover next steps as we get closer to the August 1st bill deadline. So we're going to talk again about the semester startup guide, which I know many of you received a link to that by email from me because I send out the emails to I'm lucky enough to send the emails to our new students. We're definitely going to talk about communication and hand in hand with that is authorizations. Authorizations will allow students to provide access to their accounts and their information, but it will also help us make sure that we're able to cover their charges. So we'll get into that as we continue. The most important reason why we're here is to discuss the anatomy of the bill. We're also going to talk about health insurance, and I know that's going to be a big question for many of you here is how to waive the health insurance. And we're going to talk about that today. And then payment plans. So we're going to talk about how to set up a payment plan and how to make direct payments. We will also review a little bit about loans because we are talking about the bill. We want to make sure we're talking about all the options that you have to cover the bill. Lastly, we are going to talk about federal work study, a little bit about the paperwork, and then how to set up direct deposit. So we have a little bit of the summer timeline here. So we're going to go through each of these dates, important dates. As I shared before, you don't have to remember all of them. You'll be able to review them at any time when you go back to the webinar. So fall 2002 e-bill notifications went out on the 7th. So many of you know that was sent out sometime last week. And I know many of you know because I've been communicating with some of you about some of this process. You can waive the insurance on 7/1. We ask that you don't try to go in and do that before that date because the site will give you an error message. We really want you to waive it within that period because we do have several programs running outside of undergraduate students. So we have to stagger it to make sure we're getting everybody's information. July 1st is when the housing assignments are going to be available in U Online. We're going to talk about how that's going to affect the bill when we get more in depth and start looking at it bill. Fall 2022 bills are due on August 1st. Move-in day and classes start on August 27th. So move-in day will be the weekend before. Very exciting day. We'd love to see you all. On October 1st, not to jump ahead and talk about something that seems very in the future, but it will be here before we know it, the 2023-2024 FAFSA will be open in October. The wonderful thing about the FAFSA is that they use what we like to call prior, but as you know, they use 2 years prior to the income you put on the FAFSA. That's to allow people to not have to wait for their taxes to be completed. Many of you who went to college, if you utilize the FAFSA, remember that scramble we used to make to get your taxes done to do the FAFSA form. So they really wanted to try to eliminate that and support more families in completing the form. So in November and December, that's when the spring 2023 e-bill notifications are going to go out. And then bills are due in January, and then the classes will begin. So, I'm going to highlight the undergraduate startup guide again. I really do like this form. It is very, very well done. Just going to highlight it really highlights some of the important items that you need to take care of. The first, one of the most important requirements is if students are accepting the direct loans, they need to make sure they complete the loan requirements. Just an FYI for everyone, when students complete the MPN and the entrance, when they're doing it on the Department of Education website, it does take a little bit of time for them to send that information to us. So sometimes students reach out and they're being very diligent and they're saying, I completed this form, but it's not showing. So we usually say, periodically check your account and you'll see it update as we go. To any students who receive scholarships out there, congratulations. We do need you to send those letters to us, whether they're sending the funds directly to you or we'll be sending it to the university. We do need to know about them. So we ask that you send your award. They typically send you an award letter telling you how much. If you could just send that to us. Waive and enroll health insurance. We're going to mention that a lot this evening because I know it's something that is really important and it's weighing on everybody's mind. I know by the questions I get by email, so we just want to make sure we touch on that a couple of. Make payment or make sure your loan apps are complete. So that will, at that point, when your family decides how you're going to cover any remaining balance, you'll make sure that those arrangements are in place. And then it will give the student an opportunity to figure out how to go in and create an authorized non-student user to get into TouchNet, which is our billing portal, and we're going to get into TouchNet, and we're going to look at some of the we have some screenshots, so we can kind of walk you through how that process is going to work. So just in case you didn't get a link to our startup guide in email, this is a link to it. You can also go on the UNE website and search 2022 startup guide, and it will bring the form right up for you. Timely information is key, and you'll hear us talking about this a lot. We'll begin sending notifications to the students' UNE email. That's the way that we notify students, and it's the official communication of the university. So it won't just be our office, it will be their advisor, the registrar office, student affairs. They will communicate through email to your students. So we want students to get in the habit of going into their UNE email and checking it daily. If you know that your student hasn't completed the setup of their UNE email, please have them do that, because we're probably sending communications to it right now that they might be missing. We don't want them missing that. There's also the student online portal. You hear us talk a lot about U online account, and that's where a student's going to be able to access their academic records. So not only their financial aid information, they'll be able to see their schedule, they'll be able to see the credits that they've taken, they'll be able to see their grades. So they'll spend a lot of time in there. So again, if you know your student hasn't been in there yet, I would encourage them to, let's get them in there so they can start to be familiar with it. And then there are other information portals. One in particular that we're really going to touch on tonight is TouchNet, and that's our billing portal. We're going to get into that today. So there are 3 authorizations that we need students to complete. The first one is the FERPA. The second one, we're listing it here as TouchNet, but we'll get into what that actually looks like. And then the third one is Title IV. And I apologize in advance. Unfortunately, in student financial services, we absolutely love our acronyms. So you're seeing Title IV there, and you're probably saying, I don't understand what that means, but we'll go over that, and we'll go over it in simpler terms. Sometimes I know we love our jargon, so we'll make sure to cut through the jargon for you. So the first authorization is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, or the FERPA form. Your student will have to complete this form. I apologize. The student will, I was fast fingered there. Student will have to complete this form if they want you to be able to access their information beyond billing, because we're going to talk about how to get into the billing portal separately. But if your student knows that they're going to want you to be able to call or email us and ask us questions, they will need to complete that form. We're at this place now where students now have, according to the Department of Education, have a right to their privacy. So we have to get their permission to provide any of their information to a third party. When the student completes the FERPA form, we do ask for your last 4 of your social. That's just so that we can confirm who you are, so that we can protect the student's privacy. That's so very important. Again, this is a completely different process from setting up an authorized user in TouchNet. And again, we're going to talk about that this evening in more detail. But both authorizations are very important because they give family members access to be able to assist students and coach students as they go through the billing process and the financial aid process. So we have been discussing a little bit about authorized users and TouchNet. So TouchNet is UNE's online billing portal. This is that second authorization that we were talking about that students need to complete so that they can provide access to their financial aid and billing information. If you see, we have a screenshot of TouchNet here. We wanted to be able to show you. Your student will be able to go through their online account, which will then bring them to TouchNet. And if you see, there's directions on how they do that at the bottom. So let's select Student Financial Services, then select Student Accounts, and then select Manage My Bill, and that will bring them to TouchNet. And there they'll have the opportunity where, as you see, it says select Add Authorized User. They will put the email address of the person that they want to set up as an authorized user, and then decide which information they want to be able to share with that person. What will happen then is you'll get an email, and then you'll be able to go in and set up your profile. So the third authorization is the Title IV authorization. So I know everyone's wondering, what is Title IV? Title IV is the federal aid that is provided to students by the federal government by way of the Department of Education. So when we're talking about Title IV, we're talking about direct loans, we're talking about the Pell Grant, we're talking about the SEOG grant, we're talking about the Parent Plus. The reason why we talk about the Title IV authorization is we are required to utilize a student's federal aid to cover their educational charges, but yeah, we have to get their permission to cover their non-educational charges. And I know it's thinking, what else could they have that's not a non-educational charge? Health insurance is not considered an educational charge, even though they're required to have it. Parking and damage fees or fines. late fees or interest, or any other non-mandatory fees. So if your family knows that you want that aid to be able to assist with any of those charges, we always say have the student complete the Title IV authorization and approve or click yes so that we can do that. And here's just a link to where we can find that form. Your student can find that through their UOnline. So the most important reason why we're here tonight is to discuss the anatomy of the bill. So if you see here, this is a printout of the e-bill that is within the TouchNet portal. As many of you are aware, we don't send out paper bills, we send out e-bill notifications, but it does give you the opportunity to go on, and if you want to print a statement, you can. Just want to make sure that you know statements don't update automatically. So if you make a payment or you make a change to your aid, once you do that, when you go to print out the statement, you're going to get the same information. They only update once a month, so I just want you to keep that in mind. So we're going to go through what the pieces of the statement are, where they come from, and how they work. So first piece is you see your student's PRN number, and you'll hear us ask for that a lot. If you've called our office, if you've sent an email, we'll typically say, can we please have your student's PRN number? That is because a lot of common names, we might have 7 or 8 of those students on campus. If you can imagine how many, Michael Flynn's or Erin Flynn's, or I'm pulling that name out of the air, how many of those we could have on campus, but you'd be surprised how many of unique names we have. My name is Corinne with a K, and I always believe I'm the only one in the world, and then I meet plenty of Corinne's with a K. So it's just to make sure that we can locate and identify your student. Most of your bill due date there, and as you can see, that's August 1st. That date we're going to be talking about that date a lot. Just make sure if you're sending us anything, you're going to hear me talk about this over and over, make sure you're listing your student's PRN number. We want to make sure that we are attributing whatever it is that you send us to your student's record. So the next piece of the statement is the charges. So as you see on this student's printout, we have tuition, room and board, the general service fee, and health insurance. So this is, of course, before the student had the opportunity to waive it. So if you notice under the current charges, there's an estimated room and board amount. We use that as a placeholder so that you're able to plan when you want to borrow loans or you want to get ready to pay the bill. You'll know what those amounts are when your student gets their contract and their placement. At that point, that will update. So down here, you're seeing authorized aid. So I just want to back up a little bit to the authorized aid. So that's aid that we know is going to be coming, like a student's merit scholarship or the UNE Nor'easter scholarship. So just know any gift aid, so Pell Grant, Merit Scholarship, UNE Nor'easter, all of those things, we assume the student's going to want to accept them. So we always set them up automatically as accept. So they don't have to go in and do anything to receive those. Loans are a little different because the student is required to pay them back. So typically a student does have to go in and accept the loans. The other part of completing the loans, you might remember, as I mentioned before, is there's additional loan documentation a student needs to complete. You'll see the loans on a student's statement once they've completed all of those requirements. So if you see, we have there, it says direct loans requirements met. We have to make sure that the loan is at a place where it will be ready to disperse, which will be after add drop, which is usually 2 weeks into the semester. And again, here's the link to the health insurance. The site opens for undergraduate students on July 1st. And I just wanted to show you a quick snapshot of the health insurance page. You can, and it's funny, I do it all the time too. I go in and I just search UNE health insurance and pull the information up anytime I need it. So this is where you'll go and you'll waive the health insurance. As you notice below the button to waive, it does discuss the error message that I had been mentioning. So you just want to make sure you're not trying to do it before July 1st. And the health insurance will cover the student for the entire year. So if you're noticing for our prior year, it says that coverage will terminate on 8/31. That will be the same thing for 22-23. It will be 8/31/2023. It's always in place for an entire year. Again, the health insurance, a link to the health insurance site. We always like to reinforce our concepts here. So just to talk a little bit about some of the aid that you're seeing on the bill. And I had mentioned a little bit, just a slide before, about gift aid. And I'm going to talk about what that actually means. We like to talk about gift aid, self-help. Again, all the jargon we love to use in financial aid, but we're gonna bust through all of that, dispel all of that. So gift aid is just what it sounds like. It's aid that a student doesn't need to pay back, and it's being gifted to them. So your merit scholarship counts as that, the Northeaster. So those are institutional dollars. So the merit scholarship is based on academics, so the student does not have to complete the FAFSA. But the Northeaster is need-based, so the FAFSA is required. You have the federal grants and the state grants. Those are what are called entitlement programs. So it's student does the FAFSA, the Department of Ed says student falls into this criteria, this is how much they receive. So that's an entitlement program. But then you have outside scholarships. I know some of your students are bringing scholarships with them from high school. As you know, those have separate applications. They're not affiliated with the university, but we'll certainly apply them to your students. So now on the other side of that, we have what we call self-help. So we have the loans, the subsidized and the unsubsidized loans. And just for everyone's FYI, all subsidized means is that the government pays the interest on that loan while your student's in school. They don't pay the interest on the unsubsidized. We also have the tuition payment plan. Again, you can enroll through TouchNet, and we're going to walk through some screenshots. You enroll each semester. It's $25 to enroll, but there's absolutely no interest on those payments. If you know that you're going to have to borrow loans to close the gap, you have the option of the Parent Plus loan, which is a federal plus loan for parents. It's for parents only, and the FAFSA is required, or the private loan, which is a separate application, and you don't need to complete the FAFSA. And I'm going to touch on those loans, the Parent Plus loan and the private loan, briefly a little further to kind of talk about the difference between them. So you'll find that if any of you who have other students in other institutions, you're going to find that UNE is very unique if you haven't figured it out yet. We are a very unique place. This is one of the things that makes us very unique. Our scholarship policy. Typically, at an institution, if you receive an outside scholarship, the institution will reduce their gift aid. So they'll reduce their merit scholarship or their need-based aid, whatever their version of like the Northeaster scholarship is. Here, we allow students to keep that scholarship, and we don't reduce our gift aid. We'll only reduce it if the student is meeting or going over their cost of attendance. So that's the maximum in aid that a student can receive. And if that happens, we always try to go after the self-help first. So we'll always try to lower work study, or try to lower loans. So we never try to touch the gift aid if we don't. Remember, you're going to send us those notification letters. So we want to make sure we're counting them towards your students' aid, and we're making sure we're noting that they're having scholarships coming. So just to touch a little bit on payment options. There's a variety of ways to make payments if you're thinking of doing direct payments. So you can make payments online. I think many of us are used to, at this point, making payments online for our bills or car payments. I mean, at this point, our mortgages. So that can be done by credit or debit, or you can set up your savings and checking account. Again, that will happen in TouchNet. You can make one-time payments, or you can set up for the monthly payment plan. Your other option is to mail us a check or money order, and you would send that right here to the Biddeford campus, and I have the address there. That does take 2 weeks to process, and we want to remind you to make sure you put your student's PRN number and their name on the check so we can make sure we get that on their account. So, other ways to pay, and we talked about the Parent Plus loan and the alternative loan, and again, we're going to touch on that a little more in another slide. But also, too, for those of you that are planning to use a 529 plan, please make sure you're initiating your request for those funds by July 1st, because there is a process associated with that. It might take up to 2 to 3 weeks for that payment to be processed. So we want to make sure that it gets processed before that August 1st deadline. So just make sure when you're working with your 529 plan that you're making sure your student's PRN number is on anything that you send to us or that they send. So now we're going to dive a little bit into what TouchNet looks like. So if you notice, we have a screenshot here of what it looks like when you first log in. So if you notice at the top, you have My Account, Make Payments, and Payment Plans. So Make Payment is where you're able to go in and make your those one-time payments if you would like to do that. Or you have the option to select that. That's a link, and it will take you to the payment plan. You can also view statements, and remember, those will be static statements that only update once a month. So just want to remind you of that. And then just to touch on something that's a bit down the road, you can also access the 1098-T form. And I know a lot of you will need that when you're completing your taxes. So we are starting to try to move to a place where we can provide documents electronically, and that's so that students can access them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and don't have to wait for something to come in the mail. So your student can set up for an electronic 1098-T, and then you can go in there and print it out as much as you like. So just want to keep that in mind. So setting up for the payment plan, you'll select a term. So if you notice, we have fall 2022 at the top. Now, within this screenshot, I just want to show you, you're seeing a kind of a black rectangle across the top. There's more than one payment plan. There's also a payment plan for our COM students, which are students that are in the College of Osteopathic Medicine. So I blacked that out because I just didn't want it to confuse us while we're having, our conversation. So the payment plan you want will say fall 2022, shows the setup fee and the installments, and you would select that. And then you'll enroll, again, fall 2022, and then you'll make sure you review the statement. It will show you the charges. It will remind you of when the installments are made. You have the option when you set this up that you can make your payment at that time. Or if you would like, you can wait until August 1st. So just remember what I'm showing you here. This is what, when you log in, it's going to look like, but the information here is just for demonstration purposes. So you're seeing kind of odd dates with the payments, and that's just so we're able to show them. So as we continue on, your payment plan, it will show your amounts, and then you can select your method of payment. So if you look below, we can set up payments, personal check or savings account, or we accept the following credit or debit cards. I know a lot of times debit cards and credit cards sometimes have, debit cards sometimes have a limit. You can sometimes, and we hear this from a lot of families, they can work with their bank to say, I'm making a payment, especially a tuition payment, and they can work with you to make sure that you can process that payment. So I want to make sure I put that out there. So I want to talk a little bit about filling the gap. And you heard me mention the gap before. And what we consider the gap is where the aid stops, but where you still owe tuition and fees. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. Of course, students have their student loans. You have the option of direct payments, scholarships and grants. We discussed the tuition payment plan, and just a lot of it. you're not stuck doing one or the other. You can take a certain amount of loan, make a certain amount of payments. A lot of families, they're doing a combination of things. So just keep that in mind. It's not all or nothing on one of these options. And again, the Parent Plus loan or the private loan. And I want to kind of go over what both of those look like. And I mentioned that I would do that before. And I always tell a lot of families say, well, which one should I do? And what I say, and this is advice that I've been given for many, many years, whatever your priority is going to decide which loan you go with. So the Parent Plus loan has a fixed interest rate, 7.54%. Sorry. It's for parents only. So if a grandparent can borrow that loan for the student, and it's non-transferable, so you can't at some point transfer it over to the student. But the credit approval is much looser for the Parent Plus loan. So you don't have to have good credit, or you could have no credit. You just can't have adverse credit. The Parent Plus loan does have an origination fee, and they take that right off the top of the loan. So whenever you borrow, you want to make sure you're borrowing in addition to 4.228% so that you're covering what you need. The private loan is a little different, and it's like walking into any bank and taking out a loan. This one is just happens to be for education. You have the option of fixed or variable rate. That will depend on the lender, what they offer, the cosigner's credit score, because typically most students are going to need a cosigner. They're usually 18, 19, 20. They just haven't built enough credit to take this loan out on their own. So they're really going to base that on the cosigner's credit. They typically don't have any fees to borrow, which is a little different from the Parent Plus loan. And the student can be the borrower. And some of the lenders will allow you what they call cosigner release, which is after a certain amount of payments, you can petition to them to have the cosigner removed. If you want to take a look at more information about the Parent Plus loan, you can go on the studentaid.gov website. When it comes to private loans, we do have a preferred lender list. And when we say preferred, these are just lenders that we vetted and we work with. You are welcome to work with anybody that you would like. So if you have a relationship with Chase and you're able to get a better loan, we encourage you to go work with them. I mentioned we were going to talk a little bit about federal work study, and that's another one of those things that falls into our category called self-help. So some students, and it's the federal work studies need-based, so some students were offered work study on their financial aid report. Just remember, that's not deducted from the bill. I always like to explain it as it's an opportunity for a student to work. And students really have to be able to self-identify if they're able to manage their time to work. There are some students who can, and there are just some students who can't. But just remember, it's not deducted from the bill, and you won't see it on the billing. So it as you noticed, there wasn't a work study on the statement that I showed you. Students do need to do a couple of things. Sorry, I just want to back up a little bit, and I wanted to say, because I imagine there's some families out there saying, well, is my student going to have an opportunity to work? They won't offer federal work study. We have plenty of jobs on campus that are non-federal work study. So typically anybody who wants to have a job, we have plenty of jobs. We're even hiring in our office for a number of students. So if you have a student that you're saying, I want you to go work in the financial aid office, definitely send them our way. We would love to have your student come work with us. But to get ready to apply for a job in federal work, for work, let's just say for work, on-campus work, there's a couple of things that a student needs to do. They have to complete new hire paperwork, and they can find that on you online, but during the orientations, we're also going to have that paperwork available. And we do that because with some of the forms, a student is required to show us original copies of some of their documents, like a passport or their ID. And we don't want them to bring that to campus and then have it get lost. So we also offer that opportunity there. Students will be able to apply for jobs online in mid-August. We use a software called Handshake. So they'll be able to go set up an account and then see all the jobs that are listed and apply through there. And then the student can obtain the work study authorization once they have a job from their supervisor. So they'll work directly with them once they have a position. We do recommend that students enroll in direct deposit via UNE. So students who are receiving or doing work study or working on campus and receive a paycheck, they will receive it faster by direct deposit. As many of us know who are personally set up for direct deposit, rather than waiting for a check or having to go pick up a check or have a check mailed, it will go right into their account. When the student goes to set up direct deposit, they'll do it through their review online. And there's two options. They'll be able to select direct deposit for work study payments and for not financial aid refunds. And just very quickly about what financial aid refunds are. If a student receives aid that is in excess of their charges, that money will be refunded to them. That's a financial aid refund. They can also have that done by direct. So a couple of the documents that we were talking about, we have the W-4 form. We have, Maine has its own W-4 form that a student will have to complete. I've been at UNE now just a couple of months, so those are the same forms that I had to complete. And then also an employee confidentiality agreement. Students might be privy to, as they work in offices, might be privy to information that's confidential. So we want them to be aware of that. We want them to make sure that they're being cognizant of that and keeping that secret and keeping that. So as we were discussing the required forms, one of them is the I-9. And I know you're seeing right on the top, it says student must present I-9 in person. The reason that there is, when the I-9 form is completed by a student, the employer also has to complete a section. And what the employer is doing is saying, I'm certified that I saw the student's original documents. Again, I want to say that again, the original documents. Unfortunately, we can't accept a photocopy. So that's why it's so important that we do it while a student is here, and the student has to be present because we need to review the document. Now, when it comes to the I-9, sometimes it's a little bit confusing for folks on what documents you need or you can use. So the two things that the I-9 is doing is, one, the student is proving, well, let's say the employee is proving their identity. And then number two, they're showing that they're authorized to work in the United States. So you have some documents that do both of those things, and then some documents that only do one of those things. So you notice you're seeing passports. So if your student has a passport, it meets both of those requirements. If your student doesn't, they can provide to prove their identity, their driver's license or their state ID card, anything with their picture on it that identifies them for who they are. And then for their authorization, most people utilize their social security card. There are other forms that you can provide. I always say if you know you don't have those docs, you can always Google I-9 and it will give you a list. So just as I want to mention again, we will have forms available at orientation, nuts and bolts, for any of you that have signed up. So please, please, please feel free to bring those documents at that time and complete those forms. Reinforcing again, just a reminder that they have to be done by the student in person. So we're just going to do a quick timeline recap. So the 22-23 academic year is the year that we're gearing up and we're getting ready for. So fall e-bills were emailed on June 7th. As many of you are aware, we discussed tonight. The fall bills are due on August 1st. So during that time, we want to make sure you're completing your loan applications, you're setting up payment plan, you complete prom note and entrance counseling, you waive or enroll in health insurance, and you submit federal work study forms. I know that it seems very much a way off, but 2023-2024 FAFSA will be open in October, and you're going to use your 2021 tax documents. The spring 2023 e-bills will be emailed, and then you can enroll at that time in your spring payment plan. And then the spring bills will be due before classes resume for spring 2023, and that's when the terms start. So those will be due on December 3rd. And then your student, who at that point will be considered a returner, will receive their financial aid email notification in April of 2023 for that next upcoming year. As you can see, financial aid is very cyclical. The only thing we do want to let you know is once a student is a returning student, if they are selected for verification, and some of you are working through that process right now, they won't receive their award until that's complete. That's a little different from what you're experiencing now. We've awarded, if you're selected for verification, we still award you, and then we help you work through the process. That's different for returning students. So just want to remind you, we do have one more upcoming webinar, and that's on Wednesday, July 13th. That's at 6 p.m. You'll be joining me again on that webinar, which is Home Stretch to Semester Startup. You can find a login to that if you wanted to sign up for that, the same place you found the sign up for this webinar. It should be under events on the UNE website. But just please, during this process, stay in touch with us. We want to make sure that you're successful. We want to make sure your student's successful. We want to be there with you and them at the end of this journey when they're getting that diploma. We want to help you get there. That's the ultimate finish line. So if you notice, we have some of our contact information there. Feel free to call us at any time. We also have virtual appointments. Our hours are 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So please feel free to give us a call. You can also email us. We're very unique because we are a service-oriented office that if you call our office, we're going to answer the phone. So we would be more than happy to speak to you. So we do have a couple of questions that have been coming in, and I'm seeing them come up. So I'm just going to read them out loud, and then I'm going to answer them because I'm imagining a lot of families also have these questions. The first question I got is, we completed the MPN and entrance, but it's still showing incomplete. Should we be concerned? Absolutely not. As you might remember, I said at the beginning of our hour together, the MPN and entrance have to be downloaded from the Department of Ed. So there's a bit of a lag time. As long as you know that you completed the forms, we ask students to periodically check their account for that update. There's a question about when to waive the health insurance, and I'm glad somebody asked that because it gives the opportunity to reinforce again that the health insurance is to be waived after July 1st. So go in there and do that right on the UNE website. Where can students get forms? And when we're saying forms, we were talking about federal work study forms, some of the other forms we mentioned. Those can be found in your student's UOnline account, so they can log right into that account, and there's document library where they're able to pull down those forms. How does a student utilize Handshake? Well, what will happen is mid-August, they'll get directions on how to do that so that they can go in and apply for jobs. There's another question about, do we need to accept our merit award and how do we do that? Gift aid never needs to be accepted. Again, we assume that you're going to want to receive that aid, so we put it on as accepted. So there's nothing you need to do for that. The next question is, I see room and board on my bill, but I'm a commuter. How do I get that changed? That's one of the good things about having the portal. You can always go in and you can constantly monitor what's going on with your bill. If you see something that does not seem right, and this is a perfect example, if you know that your student's going to be a commuter, you live in Biddeford, but you're seeing room and board charges, please reach out to us so that we can help you get that adjusted. Because we want to make sure that your bill is as accurate as possible. The next question is, how do I set up for a payment plan that's accurate if I can't waive the health insurance? Completely understood. If it's still set up for a payment plan now, what will happen is anytime your bill changes, your additional payments will automatically readjust. So if you make your first payment and then the health insurance comes off, it's gonna take just the balance that's due and it's gonna reallocate it for those payment, whatever payments are left. So you won't be at this place where you're in an overpayment. So that looks like those are all the questions that everyone had. Again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm so happy that you did join us, and I hope to see you for our next webinar. Have a good evening.